Platen that comes with the Viper is what we call a 4-2-1 or a 4-up, 2-up, 1-up. The initial configuration, if we don't put any adapters on it, would be 4 individual little Platen areas. Each one of these measures 7 inches wide by 13 inches tall. And we can use it in either orientation. We can either put the collar up here and have it come this way, or we could put the collar on this side and have it be this way, depending on what size print field we need. Now the 4-up would generally be used for left chests, would be used for youth, would be used for infant and toddler type garments, anything where you need a smaller print field. If I take the 2 adapters and put those on, they simply slide in place. Now we're in what we call a 2-up configuration. The 2-up configuration measures 13 inches by 16 inches. And this configuration would be used for your standard adult standard print, where you're doing your 10 by 12s or any standard size type print. If you were looking to do a very large all over fashion type print, you would take these 2 off, put on the single large adapter, and now the area measures 16 inches by 29 inches. Very large print area. Whenever you're handling the Platen, you always want to lift from the base. You never want to lift from the Platens themselves. You want to grab from the base of the entire unit. Also, when you store it, the best place to store it is either on the machine or on a flat table. What we don't want to do is take it and store it leaning up against a wall or a table or a chair. It can become warped, and then it's not going to work properly. Upon receiving the Platen, you want to check to make sure that the top surfaces are perfectly the same height in every corner relative to the print head. You'll notice at the bottom of each corner of each Platen there's an adjustment nut. The adjustment nut changes the height of your Platen. The nice thing about this is if these Platens are ever out of adjustment, you can change the position of that nut and that'll change the height. In order to check the height of the Platen, you're going to need an 11mm box wrench, or an adjustable wrench would work just fine. And something that everybody would have, 3 coins, like 3 quarters. We're going to start by making sure that the Platen is just far enough in so that the front corner, this corner right here, the print head will be over it. Now I take my 3 quarters, place them on the corner, release the print head, and I want the print head to be just barely clearing these quarters. So when I move the print head out, you'll see that's going to knock those quarters down. So now what I'm going to do, restack them, and I'm going to press the down button and lower that a little bit. Check the height again. I'm still going to push them off. Restack them, go down a little more. And I'm going to continue to do this until I get the height just right. And I'm just clearing that stack of quarters now. At this point, I don't want the height to change. So I'm going to turn the gap light off so that it turns amber. And I'm going to move the stack of quarters now to the next corner. And I'm going to check the height. And I'm just hitting that corner. So that means this corner is just a little bit higher than the other corner. So I'm now going to pull the platen out. We need to pull the platen out far enough so that we can get to the nut. Make a little adjustment. Now put it back under. Put the quarters back up in that corner. And check the height again. And we're still not quite there yet. Pull it back. Make a little adjustment. And we want to make small adjustments at a time. We don't want to make large adjustments unless it's off by a substantial amount, which it normally is not. Set it back under there. Check the height. And we're very close, but we're still touching that quarter. So we still have to adjust it just a little bit further. The height of this platen is very critical to the performance of the prints. That's why we're doing this in very small increments. Check the height again. And that is just clearing the height of that stack of quarters. We then proceed to do that for each corner. So I'm going to move the quarters here, I'm going to do it there. Now a very important little tip. When you do the quarters over on the far side, you want to make sure that you don't stack the quarters and move the print head from the docking station towards the quarters. If you knock them off, they're going to fall down into the machine. So what you want to do is make sure that you move the print head out first, then put the quarters down in that corner, and then bring the print head towards you and make sure that it just clears the stack of quarters. Now the adjustments that I'm making, I'm simply making with my 11mm box wrench, and I'm simply taking this nut and I'm either screwing it down to make it a little tighter, which would make the stack a little shorter, or I'm moving it out and loosening this nut, which makes this a little bit taller. Now the one thing that you want to remember is that when you're doing these, let's say you adjust the front two corners. Then you go and adjust the back two corners. After you adjust those, you'll probably have to go back to the front and make slight adjustments again. And continue to do that until you get all four corners adjusted in each one of these. You cannot take a measurement from here down to the platen. The only way that this works properly is to take a measurement from the surface to the print head. So this technique that I'm demonstrating is the only technique that works properly. Again, make sure that that gap light, after you set that first corner, is turned off. Otherwise, every time you reach under there, it could set the gap height differently, and you want to make sure that it's not raising and lowering itself. So you want to make sure you turn that off. To load the platen, you want to take your garment, and for this to be in portrait, we're going to put the collar towards the control panel. So the first thing I want to do is get the collar on the edge. I want to get the tag in the center. I want to put my fingers on each side, and I'm simply going to slide the shirt and my fingers along the edges and pulling this nice and straight, and pull it till the collar just comes off the front edge of the platen. That way I can be consistent in loading each shirt the same way, because I know if I pull each shirt just off, that's the same position for each and every single one when I'm doing multiple quantities. I now want to go to the bottom side and make sure I have equal amounts of fabric sticking out on both sides. And that looks nice and even. So I want to tuck the front end first. So I'm going to take the collar side and I'm going to tuck that in. Then I want to tuck the bottom in second. So I'm going to go to the bottom now, and I'm going to tuck that in. And then when I tuck the sides in, I want to tuck them both in at the same time. Now we don't want to stretch the shirt, but we want it taut. We just want it nice and smooth. I'm going to skip this middle section because there's no gripper there. So then I'm going to come towards the front. And then I'm going to pull these corners in a little bit just to make sure that they don't stick up. Now they're nice and tight and flat. All the excess material just gets tucked underneath. Same thing for this front corner. I'm going to just tuck these in a little bit. And then I'm going to slide all the excess material underneath. We'll make sure that that tag doesn't get in the way. To load this now, I'm going to hit the down button, and we'll lower this a little bit. Again, always assuming I had something very thin in the machine. I'll now grab the whole platen and move it forward, or if you prefer, you can use the forward button, and we want to make the front edge of this platen go underneath the cover by about 1/4 of an inch, so that the laser sensor catches the front edge, just like that. We then want to pull the platen tight to this side. And now we hold the button for up as long as the gap light's on. Now notice the gap light was not on, it's amber. So it's a good thing we checked that. Always want to make sure that's green. We hold the up button until the platen stops itself. And then we press load. To load a garment in a landscape position, it's the same technique. We center up the garment, put our fingers out at the edges, slide forward till the collar just comes off. Make sure I have even amounts of fabric on both sides. And start with the collar side, tucking it in first. Then going to the opposite side. Then do the left and right at the same time. Tuck in the corners. And the rest of the fabric just gets tucked underneath. Again, we have a print surface that we have nothing sticking up and is perfectly flat, ready for printing. One of the most important things you can remember about this printer is the print surface needs to be the highest, flattest surface. It needs to be the closest to the actual print head. So if I take a garment, such as this shirt right here, Okay, there are several things that we need to be concerned about. If I were to put this on the Platen like this, the buttons are in the way, the placket's in the way, the collar is in the way, the arm seams are in the way, the side seams are in the way. All of these things will affect the height. Even if I try and pull this off to this side like this, okay, I still have this seam and this seam are still up on the top surface, which would affect the height of the gap sensor. So in order to accomplish printing a left chest logo on this garment, I need to create a jig. Now, for this example, I'm simply going to take my cell phone, set it up here. Now, we wouldn't use a cell phone. We would normally use a piece of cardboard, a piece of wood, a piece of plexiglass, anything that will allow the print surface to become the highest, flattest surface. So if I put this on here now, you will see that if I tuck in the top and bottom, and then I tuck in the sides, everything is slightly lower than this area right here, which is the area that I wish to print. Now I simply take all the excess material and just tuck it under, just like we did with the t-shirt earlier. If you're doing a lot of production, it's always best to have not one Platen, but two. The advantage there is while one's printing, you're loading the next one so that as soon as this one is finished, you can put the next one on the machine and start printing, and then the one that you've removed, you can deal with that one, reload it, so that again, when the one that's on the machine has finished, the next one is ready to be loaded on the machine. That will increase your production dramatically.